Three bushfires continue to burn on Queensland's Western Downs, with one suspected to be lit deliberately.
Very dangerous conditions, no opportunity for firefighters to stop something like that.
Olympian Peter Bowl has his suspension lifted as a second sample throws doubt on doping accusations. Thousands displaced across the strait by Cyclone Gabriel in what's been described as New Zealand's worst weather event in 100 years. And the exiled Crown Prince of Iran gives an exclusive Australian interview calling for his country to transition to a secular democracy. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Elias1. Firefighters are battling three major bushfires on Queensland's Western Downs. The fire of main concern is an uncontained, fast-moving blaze burning at Mile Park near Miles. Laura Lavelle is in Miles and she reports to us from there.
It's just been confirmed that this fire now spans over more than 26,500 hectares. To kind of put that into perspective, yesterday morning we were hearing that it was 2,000 hectares that was damaged, and to hear now that it's more than 26,000, I guess just goes to show how fast-moving and dangerous this fire is. Right where I'm standing here, just north of Miles, it was raining an hour ago, but firefighters say that it may not be a blessing. It can often bring storms and lightning, which can create more fires as well. Some residents here have been able to return to their homes. We're hearing that a number have been destroyed, but the official confirmation hasn't come through about that yet. Firefighters are just so focused at the moment to make sure that that blaze doesn't spread and to protect as many homes as possible. It's unclear at this stage how this fire here north of Miles started, but in Tara, where more than 20 structures were destroyed, police are now saying that that was a suspected act of arson.
We do understand, and police are working with us on the fire at Williambilla, that it was probably arson, and we suspect that. Police will confirm that, but our indications are that it was arson.
Now, police are appealing for anyone with information to come forward. Looking ahead at conditions tomorrow and into the weekend, it's set to remain unstable weather conditions, and that high fire risk remains in place through the weekend as well. The message to residents is to keep an eye on the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services Facebook page and website, and of course, if they feel that their lives are at risk, to call 000.
Australian Olympic runner Peter Bowl is free to compete again following the lifting of his provisional doping ban. A Sport Integrity Australia statement has confirmed Bowl's B sample did not match the positive finding of his A sample for the banned substance EPO. The body says the B sample showed an atypical finding as opposed to the adverse finding from his A sample. The investigation is ongoing and Sport Integrity will consider whether the runner has committed any violations. He was suspended from October, and having maintained his innocence throughout, his camp is now claiming vindication.
Good luck charging Pete with no evidence of anything. It's not going to happen. So he's innocent. They're trying to cover themselves. This was a horrific mistake to announce this publicly. It never should have happened, and they're just trying to cover their tracks.
Joining me now is Dr. Catherine Ordway, who's an Associate Professor at the University of Canberra School of Sport and Exercise Science. Now, Catherine, thanks for joining us. Peter Bowl says he's been exonerated. Has he?
It's too early to make that claim yet. Sport Integrity Australia have made it very clear that this is an atypical finding on his B sample, which means that further investigation is required. So it's too early yet.
So why would Sport Integrity Australia continue to investigate this?
Because that's the advice from the laboratory. The World Anti-Doping Agency has about 30 laboratories around the world that are able to do the analysis of erythropoietin, which is EPO in this case. And the first sample, the A sample, came back with an adverse analytical finding. And that's the first piece of evidence that's required for an anti-doping rule violation under the World Anti-Doping Code. And then, of course, the B sample's gone away to Germany, which is the second laboratory to have a look at this, and they've said, well, it's not an adverse analytical finding, it's something less than that, but it is atypical, so further investigation is required.
Okay, but if it is that Peter Bol is vindicated or exonerated, as he puts it, is that a concern given that EPO was found in an A sample but not the B? Does it reflect poorly on the testing systems, I guess is the question.
It's not impossible for that to happen, and in many ways you want to make sure that this safeguard is in place. The A and the B samples are collected at the same time, and then they're split by the athlete to allow for exactly this situation where the laboratories can do a secondary analysis to confirm the first one. The confirmation hasn't happened, but further investigation is required. Because EPO is produced in all of our bodies, it's quite difficult for the laboratories to tell whether this is synthetic EPO that's come from outside or whether or not this is just some kind of genetic difference or some other reason for this appearing in this particular athlete's sample.
That was actually going to be my next question. So what exactly is EPO, and could it appear in someone's bloodstream without intention, accidentally?
Well, EPO is in all of our bodies because it's produced by the kidneys in order to increase the oxygen going around our bodies. And so synthetic EPO is developed through the laboratories in order to help people who have renal failure or cancer or some other kind of condition where they have very low red counts and blood cells. And so they need to have that oxygen-inducing product in their bodies. What is difficult to tell from the analysis is when that line has been crossed. So that's why the additional investigation is required in this case.
And just a final question, what happens from here? Can we expect, I guess, when can we expect to see Peter Bol cleared in full? When can we expect to see, I guess, some finality to this investigation?
Well, Sport Integrity Australia have made it very clear in their media release today that they don't put a time frame on it. And that's understandable in a way because you want both Peter Bol's lawyers to be able to get their best advice and also Sport Integrity Australia to get the best brains in the world together and to compare that expert evidence. It's an extraordinarily damaging claim and ruins the reputation of an athlete, so you don't want to get this wrong. So I think that they'll be taking every step along the way to make sure that this is an anti-doping rule violation if it is going to be proceeded with further.
Dr. Catherine Ordway, thanks for your time.
Very welcome.
Victoria's Supreme Court has heard a man killed his girlfriend and left her body in a bathtub for months because he was jealous of her relationship with another woman. Andrew Baker has pleaded not guilty to murdering Sarah Gatt, whose decomposed remains were found in 2018. Reporter Christian Silva has more.
Sarah Gatt's body was found inside a townhouse in Kensington in Melbourne's inner west in early 2018. Police made that discovery, and they also believe that that body had been inside the apartment, inside the bathtub for quite some time. Today the court heard that Sarah Gatt was in an on and off relationship with Andrew Baker. Now Mr Baker was said to be quite jealous of another relationship that Miss Gatt was having with another woman in Melbourne, and that further strained their relationship. The court heard that Mr Baker allegedly murdered Sarah Gatt in the townhouse before placing her body in the bathtub and then covering the body with several household items, including a hairdryer and a bottle of some kind of bath lotion as well. The court heard that Mr Baker allegedly brought some friends over to the property a few months later and actually even showed them the body. Now, Mr Baker's defence lawyers say that just because he showed them the body, just because he was aware that Sarah Gatt might have been dead, it doesn't mean that he actually murdered her. So they insist that he does plead not guilty and that he maintains his innocence. The defence says that the prosecution case against Andrew Baker is a circumstantial one and there's no direct proof that he was involved in the killing. This trial could go for between 3 and 5 weeks. So we've only just wrapped up day one. About 40 witnesses could be called. There'll be some police experts, pathologists, anthropologists. and also friends of both Mr Baker and Miss Gatt, as well as the other woman who Miss Gatt was in a relationship with.
New Zealand's Prime Minister has described the damage from Cyclone Gabriel as the worst in a generation. The low-pressure system has brought dangerous surf, heavy rain and destructive winds to the North Island, with some areas receiving more than 500 millimetres in the past 48 hours. A national emergency has been declared for just the third time in the country's history, but the dangerous weather is beginning to ease.
Here is the current situation as we know it at the moment. The centre of the cyclone is just north of the East Cape. It's moving in a southeasterly direction away from the country. There is still rain and wind forecast for the Tairāwhiti-Gisborne area, a few showers, further showers for Hawke's Bay, and a large band of rain through the central part of the country. The good news is overnight tonight, in most areas we are expecting to see the weather easing.
Tens of thousands of people are without power and remain in evacuation centres, with authorities yet to assess the full extent of the damage. Defence personnel are helping emergency crews evacuate residents in some of the worst affected areas. There are also grave concerns for a volunteer firefighter who became trapped inside a house when it slid down the side of a mountain.
2 firefighters were in a house in Muriwai overnight before it collapsed due to a landslide. So one firefighter was rescued. He's in hospital. But as you mentioned, one is still missing. There hasn't been any updates yet on that. The latest was that, the search is still continuing. They had to call off the search in the early hours of the morning due to the ground being quite unstable and the weather still severe. In that press conference that our Prime Minister Chris Hipkins spoke at later this afternoon, he said that his thoughts and prayers were with the family.
There's our deck floating down.
In Auckland, the surf club's deck has been washed out to sea. The nearby road had only just been repaired from the flooding in January. Meanwhile, locals have pitched in to help save livestock caught up in the wild weather.
We tried to get hold of the police, we tried to get hold of the farmer, no luck, so on the way back we just stopped, got over the fence and shifted them. And we thought we've got to give them a hand. And the poor sheep, the water wasn't really that deep, but they were just so exhausted, they just had no energy left. Yeah, so we just had to give them a hand. Hard work.
Humanitarian aid is on the way from Melbourne to Turkey in the wake of the devastating earthquakes. The initial shipment consists of 9 pallets containing tents, blankets and medical supplies. The aircraft will travel to Singapore to connect with Turkish Airways from its arrival in Turkey. It's the first of many such aid flights.
It's terrible what's happened with the earthquakes. A lot of people are suffering over there, so I'm glad that the community can come together, along with the airlines, might as well as Navia, we can assist with bringing these goods from Australia to Adana directly through the help of I think it's Turkish Airlines, Qantas, Malaysian. That's a group effort come together to make this happen moving from today. Yeah. Today, in total, what we have so far over the next few days, which we're moving is approximately 108 pallets, between 20 to 30 tonnes, but over 200 cubic metres of air freight. So this flight from here in Melbourne, we're moving via Singapore and going up to Istanbul with Turkish Airlines from Singapore, going down to Adana.
Meanwhile, New South Wales fire and rescue firefighters have made their first assessment of the devastation on the ground. The 52 firefighters are part of an emergency team sent as part of the international aid effort following the earthquakes. The group are working in conjunction with local rescue crews, initially focusing on search efforts. Firefighters will work in 12-hour rotations using telescopic cameras and detection devices to search for survivors still trapped underground. Washington and Beijing are trading accusations about the shooting down of an unidentified object, with China claiming several American spy balloons have entered its airspace. It comes a week after the US shot down what it says was a Chinese surveillance balloon off the coast of South Carolina. Since then, fighter jets have downed 3 more mysterious items in North American airspace. The US administration says it knows very little about the objects, but can be certain of one thing.